Chapter 22, Episode 22, Devil's Hand 3. Social gathering. The name reminded me of a social gathering in a bar, but the scale was different when the main participant were the children of the 12 northern families. The social gathering of the 12 northern families was not just a gathering of their children, but was also a banquet attended by various people. These people attended the social gathering every year, and those include people who wanted to associate with the 12 northern families, Lanjasthay's influential people, celebrities whom the children were usually interested in, etc. As such, the social gathering was one of the big events expected every year for the community near Lanjasthay, and one's evaluation in high society also changed depending on whether they were invited to the social gathering or not. Anyway, for that reason, wow, Jude and Cordelia were in pure admiration after the two came out of their respective rooms and faced each other in the drawing room. This is because of the eye-opening beauty of an incomparably beautiful girl and an absolutely handsome boy that have made every effort in dressing up for the social gathering. Beautiful. If the Cordelia I saw in the valley was as mysterious as a fairy, the Cordelia today was as beautiful as a goddess. She had pinkish, slightly curled red hair that not only gently fluttered but even glistened, and a lively white complexion. She was wearing a red dress. Cordelia usually looked much younger than her age because of her innocent face, but wearing a mature dress that totally revealed her shoulders made her hidden seductive beauty be seen. The skirt width was quite narrow, unlike the usual wide skirt, and the beauty of her leg lines and her slender legs captivated the eyes of every person at first glance. Of course, Jude looked great too. It was only a month ago, but thanks to eating the various kinds of miraculous medicine that Count Chase gave him, his chinmujic and his sweating from physical exercise, his skinny body that had once lost weight was rapidly improving. With his naturally good body shape plus his recent body improvements, his clean suit stood out properly. However, Jude proved that the completion of all fashion is in the face. His face had strong-willed, mysterious green eyes that lie between his gentle facial lines. When the two looked at each other and were fascinated for a while, Dahlia and Marja, who were mesmerized together, soon exchanged glances with a warm smile. You did great. You too. In fact, he naturally looks good in any clothes. She does too. Either way, they were both very satisfied. Furthermore, a smile was drawn on their mouths when they thought that the two would enter the banquet hall together. Should I say I can't wait to see other people's reactions? Let's go now. Young master, you have to escort her. Oh. With Maya's urging, Jude reached out to Cordelia, who came to her senses too and took Jude's hand. Wow, seriously, my heart would have been throbbing if you weren't out boxer. You too, it's the same for me too. After exchanging glances, the two smiled as if they felt the same, and entered inside the carriage after passing by the knights who could not hide their admiration. Rather than the large four-wheeler carriage they used on the trip, the two rode on a small carriage that operated inside Lanjasthay, while Marja and Dahlia were going to ride another carriage. Thanks to this, there were only the two inside, and as soon as the door closed, Jude and Cordelia's straight postures collapsed. You're very much dressed up. You too. Cordelia snorted, looked back at herself in the carriage window's reflection, and grinned. Why? Because she's pretty, Cordelia is the prettiest. Oh, narcissism, don't do that in front of others. Well, it's true that Cordelia is pretty though. She's pretty even when you look at it right. Well, it's pretty, but it's a relief. What? When I saw you talking in third person, it woke me up. My heart is pounding at seeing Yellow Storm is something that shouldn't have happened. Jude breathed a sigh of relief as he watched Cordelia, who was laughing loudly and snorting. He straightened his posture and said, Moving on, let's not get carried away, because today's an important day. Did you get some rest? You went through a lot yesterday. He had worked hard yesterday. If I have to say, it's not stage 4, but stage 3.5. At Cordelia's question, Jude looked sad for a moment because he remembered what happened yesterday, but soon smiled bravely. Well, it's worth the trouble, though it's best not to use it at all. If things went well, I wouldn't be able to use it. Cordelia nodded her head as if agreeing with Jude, and then reached out her hands to Jude. "Wait a minute. Huh. Stay still." As she approached with a serious face, Jude unconsciously felt nervous, but he soon found out her purpose. "The tie is crooked." Cordelia grabbed the bow tie that Jude wore and smiled contentedly after straightening it with a few touches. "Okay, there we go, it looks right now." Cordelia patted Jude's chest with a thud and sat down again, and Jude tried to clear his throat. Ahem, ahem. Why are you shy? F***CK. Oh, you had such a cute side. Should I say that her yufufu laughs resembles that of the fairy queen? Let's focus, it's a very important day, you know, right? I know. It was like the time I met Lizagang. The tension he felt like back then made them continue talking nonsense to each other. Jude took a breath and looked out the carriage window. The sun's red glow spread as it slowly set. The social gathering was held in one of Langersthay's most famous restaurants, which was a place owned and funded by Count H.R. Svelga. Despite the fact that the social gathering had not yet begun, the banquet hall was crowded, and there were a few places where people were especially crowded. The children of the 12 northern families. There was Lucas H.R. Svelga, the host of this social gathering, and the H.R. Svelga heir, whose family currently leads the 12 northern families. There was Sylvia Crossbell too, daughter of Count Crossbell, whose family boasted immense wealth. Among the children of the 12 families who gathered today, they were the two people who were particularly prominent, and as evidenced by this, there were many people who gathered around them. Well, there's some children who are marginalized. The 12 families were not equal in power. On the left wall, among her escort knights, stood a dreary-looking girl with a dejected face. She was Viola Lang of Viscount Lang. She spent most of the year in the mansion, or in her own room. However, she was afraid of people, so she couldn't speak properly in a place where people gathered. If you survive, you'll be a good friend of Cordelia. To be exact, they would be like older and younger sisters. Jude turned his gaze again. The male twins of Count Dahat were gazing at Lucas with discontented eyes. Felix Durant of Marquis Durant, the oldest child in this social gathering, was sending a passionate gaze to Sylvia. Therefore, a total of 8 people, including Jude and Cordelia, were the children of the 12 families who attended this social gathering. Oh, Lady Cordelia, perhaps the person next to you is your fiancé, Mr. Jude Bayer. When Jude turned reflexively to the voice he heard from his side, he saw a young nobleman of Langersthay talking to Cordelia. Cordelia tried to remember the young man in her dim memories, but soon smiled widely and started reading the same Korean language book as usual. He is my fiancé, Mr. Jude Bayer. Oh, as expected, Count Bayer. In an instant, the banquet hall stirred with the appearance of the new face, Jude, who had never made an official appearance before. That guy. He has an ideal, beautiful face like the rumors. Doesn't he look fine despite being called the Count's anguish? Has he recovered from his disease? There were lots of chattering here and there in small voices. The scattered children of the 12 families moved towards Jude and Cordelia, and the way opened at once, as if it was split like the Red Sea. Cordelia glanced at the coming Viola from afar. Jude chuckled at the approaching twin brothers and looked at Lucas and Sylvia after moderately turning away from Felix's gaze, who will not appear at the social gathering next year. They both stand out. While Cordelia still retains her girlishness, Sylvia has grown mature not only in her eyes but also in her small gestures, even though they were only a year apart. Of course, her body had distinct curves too. She had long sky-blue hair and was wearing a snow-white dress, and with her blue eyes full of curiosity, she looked at Jude and Cordelia. And Lucas H.R. Svelga. Today's most important figure. A blond, attractive-looking man strutted his way to their side. Although he was 16 years old and younger than Jude, he was much taller by almost a head. He has been training since he was young, so his body was firm. It's been a long time, Cordelia. It's been a long time, Sylvia. When Sylvia smiled and spoke to her, Cordelia answered with a slight blush in her cheeks. Sylvia's beauty was so alluring that even people from the same sex were enchanted. But it's surprisingly bearable. Jude had prepared his heart firmly if he ever gets caught up by her beauty, but surprisingly, he felt like he was just watching a Hollywood actress in a movie. Maybe I'm used to seeing an incomparably beautiful girl. Sylvia was also an incomparably beautiful woman. In any case, Jude was able to introduce himself in a calm manner in front of Sylvia, a woman of great beauty. I'm Mr. Jude Bayer of Count Bayer. It's a pleasure to meet you. Me too, Mr. Bayer. I was very curious about what Cordelia's fiancé would be like. Sylvia gracefully smiled at Jude with a slight but observant look, but unfortunately, now was not the time to talk to Sylvia. After entrusting Sylvia to Cordelia, Jude saw Lucas approaching and about to greet him. Lucas opened his mouth first as expected. I'm Lord Lucas H.R. Svelga of Count H.R. Svelga. He put out his hand as if he were asking for a handshake, but his blue eyes did not contain any emotion. It's not that he's indifferent, but it's just a feeling of welcoming new guests. Well, Jude was rumored to have a body unable to master martial arts due to a chronic illness. As a person who had a great talent for swords, Lucas enjoyed being strong himself, so he had a bad habit that once he met someone, his degree of interest changed depending on whether they were strong or not. Is he too? There is another reason Jude left for the social gathering and paid attention to Lucas. Playable character. The playable characters Jude and Cordelia were the reincarnation of Outboxer 009 and Yellow Storm, respectively. So what about other playable characters? Maybe Lucas is someone's, for example, the reincarnation of the third rank in the server rankings. I can't figure it out by just looking at his eyes. If his opponent was a ranker of Legend of Heroes 2, he would have had similar thoughts. What's more, the mysterious sensation I felt when I first met Cordelia was not at all felt when I met Lucas. Psst, I can't help it. I have no choice but to experiment as I did when I first met Cordelia. I'm Mr. Jude Bayer of Count Bayer. Jude smiled and held Lucas' hand, and then said with his upper body slightly forward, Hey, you too. Mr. Bayer. Lucas, who was shaking hands, was puzzled and looked at Jude as if he was strange. He was thinking along the lines of, what are you talking about suddenly while shaking hands? No. I abruptly spoke some absurd words for a moment. My Gyumjamik is not completely cured yet. Is it because of the chronic illness? I've shown you my embarrassment. It's gradually getting better, so it won't happen anymore. No, it's an illness. I hope you fully get well. Lucas had a handsome guy's cool-looking smile on his face. Cordelia, who was watching from the side, said with her eyes, You're a fool, but isn't this too much? Ahem. Jude had nothing else to say, so he hid his embarrassment with a cough. But there are results. Lucas wasn't a ranker of Legend of Heroes 2. He didn't feel anything special when he bumped into Cordelia, and I was genuinely embarrassed by what I just said. I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate. There were pros and cons for both rankers and non-rankers. Because the playable characters are not just one or two. Legend of Heroes 2 has over 10 playable characters. What if more than 10 rankers start moving with different ideas? There was no guarantee that the rankers would unite with one mind like Jude and Cordelia. Moreover, he did not enter Legend of Heroes 2 as a ranker, but he lived as a Legend of Heroes 2 character and awakened his ranker's memory. Among the playable characters, there are not only villains but also demon followers, so there was a possibility that rankers might become powerful enemies blocking Jude and Cordelia. I'm Lord Felix Durant. I'm Mr. Jude Bayer. Jude also greeted the other children of the 12 families in a perfunctory manner. The twins of Count Dahat, who disliked Felix and Lucas and were obsessed with Sylvia, didn't have much impact in the scenario's progress, even if they lived or died in the social gathering attack. Of course I'm going to save them all. Thinking moderately, Jude looked around the banquet hall. A total of 6 wizards, including 2 newly joined wizards who were convinced by the original 4 on the first day, were scattered around. They were under the leadership of Ronin, and it seemed like they had decided on an area to cover. In addition to them, more than 30 knights were guarding the banquet hall, combined with the 6 knights from the Order of the Blue Lion that were sent by Sir Bayua, and the escorts brought by each member of the 12 families. This is much better than the original. What's left is when they come in. There was no guarantee that they would attack at the same time as the original, because Jude had already shaken the board a lot. In the first game, it just displayed the lines, "Time has passed." And time did pass. Has it been more than an hour since the banquet started? Suddenly, the music that was flowing in the banquet hall changed, and Jude and Cordelia realized that what was coming had come. Dance time. It was a scene that was depicted in Legend of Heroes 2. I danced with Sylvia when I went to Lucas' route, and I danced with Lucas when I went to Cordelia's route. But today was different. Do you feel it? I feel it. Marja and Dahlia's eyes are looking at our side with eager eyes. In particular, Dahlia's gaze was stinging because she was really showing a lot of excitement for the two of us. Actually, it wasn't just the two of them. A lot of people showed interest in the engaged couple from the 12 families who first appeared together at the banquet hall. Lady Cordelia, will you give me the honor to dance with you? My pleasure, Mr. Bayer. Cordelia answered with an awkward smile, and small cheers and applause came from around. Moving to the center of a naturally made stage, Cordelia said quietly, "Hey, do you know how to dance? What's wrong with you? Have you forgotten that I have Chinmujic?" Jude smiled and answered gently, placing his hand on Cordelia's waist and gently grasping her hands, which were flinching for a moment. "Let's dance. HMPH. Cordelia, who snorted like Count Chase, entrusted herself to Jude's guidance, and the two began to dance in rhythm. No, we were just about to start. Bangs, bangs, boom. The whole building shook with a loud roar. Losing their balance for a moment, Jude and Cordelia leaned at each other and hurriedly turned their eyes. There was a loud roar, an explosion, and a huge amount of smoke in the air. Kayao. Dozens of unidentified men wearing black masks broke into the balcony windows and walls as people screamed. At the same time, the escorts everywhere also pulled out their swords. Miss, young master. It wasn't just Dahlia and Marja. The escorts called out the names of the children they served, and fighting began everywhere. In a fleeting moment, Jude and Cordelia had the same idea at the same time. Even if we had gone to the center of the banquet hall to dance, our eyes had still chased the position of a certain person. Lucas H.R. Svelga. As a sword genius, he tried to fight in the current situation by pulling out his own sword. And there was another person. He looked at Lucas the same way, and their eyes crossed with each other. Beyond the broken wall, the demonic human Minos was standing. Chapter 23, Episode 23, Devil's Hand 4. Terms used in this chapter. Rhodos, the goddess wife of the Greek sun god Helios. She is also the personification of the Rhode Islands in Greece. Demonic human Minos. He was a result of the devil's hand's efforts in unifying a human and demon. Minos was not just given powers by the demon, but was united with the demon itself, boasting a power that was different from ordinary demon followers. In Legend of Heroes 2, Minos reigned as the unbeatable boss. In the social gathering attack event, the premise of the story was to lose to Minos in the first place, so winning was impossible no matter what you tried to do. The condition for continuing the game was not to defeat Minos, but to escape from his hands. However, this was reality. It was different from the game. Furthermore, the time of Minos' appearance was different from the game. Originally, he was supposed to appear near the end of the event like game bosses do, but he has now appeared at the same time as the start of the attack. Jude and Cordelia thought and moved at the same time when they encountered demonic human Minos. Lucas. Cordelia called Lucas' name loudly. Demonic human Minos possessed a soul-tracking ability, allowing him to identify and track the souls of beings located in his close proximity. It was this ability that made him distinguish Lucas at once. Therefore, it was not a problem to him whether you're noticeable or not. What was important to him was to secure Lucas. As he couldn't attend the banquet while armed, Lucas pulled out a dagger he had for self-defense and turned to Cordelia after hearing her call him. But at that moment, Minos started moving. La Cusaru Pio. The demonic language flowed from the mouth of the man, wearing a white mask without any pattern. His eyes shined blue, and a great amount of cold air began to rise in both of his hands. Jude felt like he was being suffocated. It was because of the pressure of facing an absolutely powerful being, just like the time when he had faced Lysagang. But it was a little different. When he met Minos' eyes for a moment, Jude felt that his spiritual and physical body were bound. "Outboxer!" Cordelia shouted as she hit Jude's back, and thanks to her, Jude was released from the bondage and he gasped for breath. "Let's go!" Cordelia shouted again. She ran towards Lucas and grabbed his arm to Lucas' bewilderment. "Lady Cordelia! Cordelia!" Sylvia, who was by Lucas' side, also raised her voice, but Jude saw Minos instead of the three. Minos took a step. The cold air from his arm began to take shape. "However, O fierce flames of Rhodos, strike down my enemies." Flame Wizard Ronin rushed at Minos, invoking his magic spell. Two beasts of flames materialized beside him and flew towards Minos. "Young master!" "Miss!" Jun and Dahlia shouted from a distance. Due to the nature of the banquet, they were only waiting outside and couldn't stay by Jude and Cordelia's side. Even now, they tried to run and shout, but there were people rushing towards them with swords, so it wasn't easy to get out of their situation. Jude made a quick judgment. The original plan was to move after joining Dahlia, but now that Minos had appeared, there was no time for it. "Lucas, we have to run, this way." Sylvia nodded immediately when Jude shouted, but not Lucas. As a sword genius and the heir of Count H.R. Svelga, the head of the 12 families, he spoke confidently. "What do you mean, running away from the enemy? As a knight I must face." "What is this crazy bastard saying, paralyze?" Lucas' words did not last until the end. Cordelia showed her true colors and used paralyze magic that caused him to be knocked down. Cordelia. Sylvia was terrified, but it wasn't the time to worry about that. Cordelia picked and grabbed one of the fallen Lucas' arms and shouted to Jude. "Let's go." Jude understood right away. Holding Lucas' other arm, he said to Sylvia. "Lady Sylvia, this way." "Yes, yes." Besides, the entire banquet hall had turned into a battleground. Sylvia didn't have a reason to refuse, because she was going to run and not fight back in the first place. "At this. Lucas mumbled as he was not completely paralyzed, but Jude and Cordelia didn't care. He may be a sword genius, but his power now was just like in the beginning of the game. He only had a dagger, not a proper sword, so if he tried to fight with a dagger, he'd only be kidnapped. His mumbles made it evident that Cordelia's magic was currently working. "Young master!" The Knights of H.R. Svelga shouted, but like Dahlia and Jun, they couldn't easily pull themselves out because of the enemies in front of them. Moreover, as the fight between Minos and Ronin began in earnest, the inside of the banquet hall truly became a mess, making it difficult to even discern the surroundings. "This way." Jude moved to the corner of the banquet hall and activated a secret door. The restaurant that was used as a banquet hall was originally a mansion of a great nobleman, and as such buildings usually had secret rooms, Jude was well aware of the secret rooms because he was outboxer. Stage 3.5. Jude and Cordelia had entered the secret room yesterday and made some preparations in advance. It was a kind of panic room. "Hard here?" Sylvia panted and asked, but Jude and Cordelia continued to move instead of answering. As soon as the still paralyzed Lucas was laid down on the floor, Cordelia used magic to light up the place. Jude went to the left corner, removed the carpet, and opened a lid a little larger than an adult's upper body. "This way." Unfortunately, it wasn't a secret passage that led outside. It was a pit that Jude and Cordelia had dug with dig magic yesterday. "Hurry up." Cordelia urged him, and Jude took out the items he had placed inside. The items kept there were the sacred rod, moonlight and various armor, swords, shields, magic circles, etc. "Sylvia, go in, you're not an important target, so you'll be fine hiding." I'm not an important target. Sylvia had always lived in the center of people's attention since she was born, so she was surprised at being told that she was not an important target. Cordelia had a bitter smile as she helped Sylvia into the pit, and Sylvia hid herself while being embarrassed at somehow being treated like a burden. Okay, let's arm ourselves. Jude handed Moonlight to Cordelia as he wore a leather armor over his tailcoat and held the sun's necklace like knuckles. No matter how much talent his body possessed because of Chunmujic, he had yet to learn proper swordsmanship, so using a fist was stronger and more comfortable for him. Cancel Paralyze. Cordelia swung Moonlight to release the paralyze spell that she had used on Lucas. Lord Lucas should accept this too. When Jude quickly handed over to him a sword and armor, Lucas looked at Cordelia fiercely, even as he was arming himself with his less paralyzed hand. Lady Cordelia, what the hell is this? Silence. The effect of silence magic was awesome. He was like the main character in a silent movie, as Lucas shouted with his mouth wide open, but his voice did not come out. Cordelia came close to such Lucas, staring straight at him as she said, "Hey, listen up, it's an emergency right now. Didn't you just get neutralized with one magic shot? Stop being unruly. The enemy is stronger than you. You should be alert and not nervous. Do you understand?" The cold and sharp truth was much more intense than foul language. Lucas bit his lips and nodded, and Cordelia, who was fiercely staring at Lucas, smiled brightly. "Don't be too scared though, let's do well together." Tapping his shoulder, she took a long deep breath and exhaled, before boldly ripping off the hem of her skirt. "Wow, why are you going to fall in love again?" F***CK. The light exchange was also beneficial to the two. In the midst of all this, the sounds of people crying and struggling from the chaos outside were heard, so no matter how much they had predicted the situation, it was inevitable for them to become tense. Will he come here? It's best if he doesn't come, but maybe he will. The range of Minos' soul tracking ability was quite short, but it was still enough to cover the entire banquet hall. After defeating Ronan, it was clear that he would head here. I'm nervous. It was different from that time with Lysagang. Demonic human Minos is an unsealed being who could show off all his abilities to his heart's content. You can do it, we are prepared, right? And if we can do it, it'll be a first. Defeating Minos. Yes, defeating Minos. It was something that countless rotten waters have not achieved, so defeating him would be a great achievement. Will we be in a feature article of Legend of Heroes? It'll be a hot article. We'll get lots of likes. We'll totally be bombarded by likes, right? Hey. Cordelia had a bright smile as she imagined it, and Jude also had a pleasant smile. It was just nonsensical stuff, but they had missed those times and thus enjoyed imagining it. You told me not to be nervous, but I'm just standing around. Lucas complained, but because he was still enchanted by the silence magic, it was just a silent clamor. And a few seconds passed. A few minutes passed. At the moment when their cold sweat came. Bang! A roar broke out outside the secret room. Screams and shouts followed, and the sound of fighting swords became even sharper. It's coming. The door of the secret room froze when Jude instinctively spoke. The chilly air spread along the wall, and soon the whole wall turned into cold ice. Demonic human Minos. Ruler of the extreme cold. Bangs, bangs, bang. I thought there was just a crack in the frozen wall, but it all collapsed at once. The messy banquet hall and the combatants of the Devil's Hand suddenly came into view, and a blood-stained Minos with a pair of horns on his forehead came in the room. Ronan. Ronan was defeated, but he didn't just lose. He had succeeded in dealing a huge blow to Minos because of their opposing elements. Jude recalled the banquet hall's map in his mind. He instantly grasped the situation. Their side has prevailed. But the situation was not good. The Devil's Hand's combatants were blocking the way, and Minos overpowered Cordelia and Lucas. For him, it was easier to defeat them than to wring a child's wrist. As if to prove this, a deep smile was drawn around Minos' mouth. The rats were hiding here. Minos took a step. Lucas, who was feeling nervous, flinched unconsciously. Cordelia grasped the moonlight with clenched teeth. It's coming, he's coming. Jude's thought. I gave a final look to Cordelia and then stepped forward. Thud. Jude's foot completely shot forward. At the same time, Minos responded. His eyes followed Jude's movement before sending a blast of extremely cold air towards Jude. Heat. Jude tore the magic circle to generate heat. However, it was only a one-star magic at best. The cold air stalled for a moment before quickly hitting Jude, and Minos took another step. Following Jude, he tried to defeat Cordelia and Lucas. And at that moment, during the time when Jude had stepped forward first. Cordelia cut her palm with a blade she had prepared in advance. At the same time as she bled, she struck the floor with the tightly grasped moonlight. Such trivial magic. A powerful demonic energy rose and burst from Minos' body. It was to tear apart Cordelia's magic formation with his powerful mana. Indeed, it was a terrifying energy. Facing it felt like you were being choked to death. However, Cordelia smiled. It was a bitter smile because of the pain in her palm, but she definitely smiled. As expected of Outboxer 009, everything went in the prescribed order. Cordelia had released mana, but it wasn't magic. She simply released pure mana with her blood that flowed down to the floor through moonlight, which then triggered the magic circle. A brilliant light lit up the place. The emitted light clearly revealed the magic circle, hidden by the carpet that had covered the entire secret room's floor. What is this? Minos stopped talking. No, he couldn't continue talking. He was choked. His whole body seemed to be entangled in chains. He seemed to be thinking, why no, what the hell is this? What the F***ck is this? Of course, it's Belastin's magic circle. Cordelia laughed cheerfully as she shouted. Belastin's magic circle boasted of a terrifying power against the demons. Minos had released a strong demonic energy, and so the chains caught his ankles. The stronger the demon's power is, the stronger the Belastin's magic circle becomes. Of course, there were limitations. We didn't have the power of the sun god Solari's seal like that time with Lysagang, so all the power that was used came from Cordelia's mana. The time to maintain it is, at most, a few dozen seconds. Even so, Cordelia had to do her best to make it last longer. It was too short, but Cordelia did not lose her smile. Though she felt like she was going to die from the hardship, she broke into a cold sweat and shouted again. Outboxer! Bang! He hit the ground. 36 world steps. Jude appeared before Minos' nose. Minos thought it was impossible. Minos' chilled air wasn't just an ordinary chilled air. It was yin energy that consumed the body and soul. Even if ordinary humans endured the cold, the body would not have been able to move freely because of the yin energy. But it wasn't the case for Jude. Because I'm used to it. Gyumjulmeek was a disease that occurs due to being innately born with excessive yin energy. The sun's necklace also helped Jude in this situation because of the necklace's opposing yang energy. Shock spread over Minos' face. Cordelia collapsed as she clung to the moonlight, before giving Minos a middle finger. Lightning punch. 7 strikes in the span of a lightning bolt struck Minos' whole body. Chapter 24, Episode 24, Devil's Hand 5. Minos lost his senses for a moment. The 7 strikes poured like a bombing, aiming at the fatal points of the human body such as the solar plexus pit of the stomach, philtrum, the area between the nose and upper lip, and the temples area between the ears and eyes. Although he was called a demonic human, he was still a human now. Since demonic humans maintain a human body and shape, their vital places were also like humans. But at the same time, it was a demon. Minos lost his senses for a moment because of Jude's attack, but he did not collapse at once. There is a difference. No matter how low level the demonic human was in the game's beginning, a demonic human was still a demonic human. Their physical abilities and endurance were beyond that of a human being's. However, he had already expected this. Moreover, Minos was exhausted from his fight against Ronin today, and was also weakened from the binding of the Belastin's magic circle. Jude didn't stop. Once again, he used the lightning punch. Whams wham! The sun god Solari's power from the sun's necklace and the demonic energy from Minos' body clashed, and a roar broke out. The Devil's Hand's combatants were surprised to see Minos being beaten unilaterally and tried to intervene. However, they too had the power of the demons, though much lesser, so it was impossible for them to enter because they were blocked by Belastin's magic circle. Young Master. Miss. Moreover, beyond the Devil's Hand's combatants were the 12 families' escort knights. It was a daunting situation to just stop the escort knights from pushing their way in front of them. It's only a matter of time. After using lightning punch in succession, Jude calculated the numbers in his head. The time for Cordelia to maintain Belastin's magic circle. The time it takes for the escorts to break through the Devil's Hand's combatants. The time when demonic human Minos adjusts to Belastin's magic circle and becomes able to move. It was all a few seconds apart. It was only a dozen seconds at most, but by those dozens of seconds, lives could come and go. Thud. Jude stepped forward again and used lightning punch for the third time. He felt his breath being choked from the technique's excessive use, but he couldn't stop. Whams bang! Lightning punch struck again. But this time, not all 7 consecutive strikes were successful. The last strike was blocked. Minos desperately moved to stop the attack. Reincarnated. When the bloody Minos burst out into a roar, lightning sparked all over his body. It was a phenomenon caused by the clash of demonic power and the binding power of Belastin's magic circle. And it was at that moment. Lucas, help us too. Cordelia shouted while she was clinging to the moonlight with her posture down. Use the Sage King's cross sword. Cordelia's cry was almost like a scream at the end. And that had awakened Lucas, who was surprised by the Belastin's magic circle and Minos. The Sage King's cross sword was said to be handed down by an ancient swordsman, and was only used against the enemies of Count Hr. Svelga. As the current heir, Lucas also knew how to use the Sage King's cross sword. His skill may still be at a low level, but it was still the Sage King's cross sword. It was the sword of Graham, the Sage King who built the Holy Kingdom by cutting down 5 great demons, and it had a powerful effect against the demonic humans who used the power of demons. Lucas' breathing changed. He raised and activated his whole body at once, as his feet completely flew towards Jude and Minos. Sage King's cross sword, solar eclipse, holy sword. Lucas' sword shone in pure white. It was a holy light that was powerful against demons. When Cordelia shouted Lucas' name, Jude pulled himself out as he gasped and widened his distance from Minos at the same time. Thus, Lucas dug into the gap that was created. Tuarak. Minos screamed as his chest was cut by a holy sword, and black blood gushed out from his chest. But it was not yet over. In the beginning of the main scenario, Jude and Lucas' strength was nearly the same. It was difficult for Lucas to defeat Minos by himself. You lowly beings. Minos shouted in anger and exerted his strength, even though he was still bounded, and Lucas had a cold sweat facing such Minos. Jude returned to Cordelia's side as he supported her and asked, "Can you do it?" "I can, instead, I cut it off." Cordelia groaned and answered. It was a difficult to understand conversation at first glance, but not for Jude and Cordelia. What Jude had asked for was the power hidden in the moonlight. However, the moment she used it, Belastin's magic circle will be released in a few seconds. Cordelia's mana was still too weak to operate both moonlight and Belastin's magic circle at the same time. Jude calculated it. Cordelia felt it instinctively. Thus, the two reached the same conclusion. Let's do it. Will Belastin's magic circle be maintained until the escorts defeat the Devil's Hand's combatants? No, the question was how long can Cordelia be able to hold on? After all, it was unreasonable. Minos was faster and could recover his strength by a hair's breadth. In the first place, Belastin's magic circle was not all around. It was due to a number of realistic problems that Jude had to set up Belastin's magic circle in the secret room. Renting the entire banquet hall to draw the magic circle was impossible, and so was activating a huge magic circle that covered the entire banquet hall. However, if you draw a small magic circle, it was another problem on how to guide Minos precisely above the magic circle. That is why I chose a secret room. It's literally a secret room, so if you sneak in the place, no one will disturb you while you're drawing the magic circle. Because the room itself is not very large, installing a magic circle that covers the entire room eliminates the problem of getting Minos to a specific area. It's the best solution. In the first place, the current situation itself was the best situation that I made with every effort. So let's try again. Instead of vaguely hopping to succeed, let's struggle in hitting him one more time. Lucas and Minos clashed. Lucas groaned at the shock caused by the collision of the Sage King's cross sword and the demonic power. On the other hand, blood spilled out of the nose of Cordelia, who was forcibly maintaining Belastin's magic circle. Jude did not hesitate anymore. As he grabbed and modified the sun's necklace's position, Cordelia clenched her teeth and stood up. The important thing is the timing. In that narrow moment, he needs to accurately strike in that gap. Jude calculated again. Cordelia felt it instinctively once again. 1 second. 2 seconds. When Lucas's sword cut Minos' chest once again. O glory of the moonlight, arise, wake up from your slumber and shine. Cordelia removed the moonlight from the magic circle. She lifted it up and chanted, releasing from the moonlight the moon's mana, which had been stored and accumulated for over 100 years. There was light. It was a subtle light that spreads in the darkness, and not a light that breaks the darkness. The moonlight filled the secret room. It did not stop there, as it delivered its power completely into one place, the sun's necklace, causing it to begin shining too. A light that contained the sacred power of Solari. The mana of the moon, accumulated over 100 years, was not small. From the sun's necklace, an equal amount light was emitted like when it was with Gallus, Solari's champion. Tuhak. Minos winced at the moment. The moon's mana pressed his whole body and closed his eyes with a painful groan. Lucas opened his mouth in surprise. Thud. Jude rushed in. He had to finish it before the effect of Belastin's magic circle, which had lost its power source, disappeared. Grace. It was a simple yet fatal magic that came from the magic circle drawn on his left hand's glove. Minos, who had stepped back as his eyes were closed, slipped and fell on the floor, and Jude got on top of him and pulled his fist. He only had one chance. His current blow should deal the most fatal blow. Jude held his breath. Using the power of the sun condensed by the moonlight for his attack's power source, the lightning strike fist exploded at once. Boom! Lightning and thunder exploded. His fist that hit like lightning struck Minos in the chest. Moreover, it was not just a physical blow this time. The divine power of the sun god Solari penetrated Minos' chest. Aleg! Minos screamed in pain. Dozens of cracks appeared in his entire body. Spirit stone. Located in the chest, it is an organ that replaces the heart of a person who has become one with the demon and turned into a demonic human. It aggregates mana supplied from the outside like a demon's horn, and is what makes a demonic human exist as a demonic human. That spirit stone broke. With the golden light of Solari adding to him being weakened by Belastin's magic circle and the continuous blows, the weakened spirit stone finally shattered. No. Mana poured out from the cracks in his entire body. Minos struggled. Jude pulled his fist again. Gobble it up. Is it an illusion that I heard Cordelia's voice? Jude fiercely laughed. He used the remaining mana of the moon on the sun's necklace as his own. As he roared, he dealt the last blow into Minos' chest. Q-ha! The light burst. As he was struck in the chest once again, Minos' whole body began to break. The demonic power rose like a smoke and dispersed in all directions. And right after that, a series of white rings of light surrounded the body of Jude. It was not only that, a phrase came into his mind like when he first attacked the dungeon book. You acquired the title, the one who made the impossible possible. All stats increased by 5%. A boss that could not originally be beaten. A scenario designed on the premise of losing. But we overcame it. We became victorious. Jude clenched his fist. Like when he first got first place in the server rankings, the sense of accomplishment coming deep inside his heart made him shout in joy. Cordelia felt the same. Despite her bleeding nose, she raised her arms high and shouted in joy too. Young Master. Miss. The voices of Jun and Dahlia was heard in succession. Jude took a long breath. A pleasant smile was drawn on his face. Haha, I'm completely wiped out. It's enough to faint, so please do me a favor. Right after they defeated Minos, Cordelia spoke as she caught her breath and was on the verge of fainting. On the other hand, Jude crawled halfway to Cordelia's side and responded. Sorry, I'll go first. I'm going to faint too. FF*CK. Guillaume's Jalmik's Kek. Jude, who was lying next to Cordelia, fainted after making a kek sound. Both of them leveled up a lot, but the stamina and mana consumed were so great. FF*Seeking Bastard. Cordelia swore a little as she collapsed on the floor too. Using the last of her mental strength to stay conscious, she told Lucas. Settle the aftermath, please. And that was it for Cordelia too. The incomparably beautiful girl who was bleeding from her nose lost consciousness too. Lucas, who was asked to take care of the aftermath, tried to shout. No, he wanted to shout, how? Cordelia's silence spell was still in effect. Furthermore, it was difficult to take care of the aftermath, because there were so many things that Lucas didn't even know about. What was that magic circle installed in the secret room? What were the active roles of Jude and Cordelia, who defeated the enemy at the end? A and the F*CKS too. An incomparably beautiful girl who kept swearing F*CK. Wasn't she Account's esteemed daughter? In a sense, the biggest impact of today's events was Cordelia's true colors. Until last year, she was pretending to be an innocent girl, but she was actually different inside. Lucas shuddered unconsciously as he looked over the collapsed wall. The escort knights had overpowered the demon followers and were coming in groups. Miss. Count Chase's escort, Dahlia, burst into tears at the sight of Cordelia bleeding from her nose, and Count Bayer's escort hurriedly took Jude's pulse. Young Master, are you all right? Lucas nodded to his escort, who had a deathly pale face, and then turned to Jude and Cordelia. He looked at the two who had fainted beside each other and had satisfied smiles in their faces. As he recalled how they worked back and forth and how Cordelia pleaded to him before fainting, Lucas unwittingly smiled. Really, they're a fantasy couple. No, have I gone mad? As Lucas swallowed his words and thoughts that Jude and Cordelia would have denied had they heard it, he looked back at his escort. He diligently pointed to his mouth and complained that he was under silence magic. Chapter 25, Episode 25, Devil's Hand 6. Terms used in this chapter. Annai means older sister in Korean, and is used by girls to call another girl who is older than them, or to a girl whom they admire. Time has passed. Just as what a person does when they wake up from a deep sleep, Jude slowly opened his eyes halfway. A lot of things, including the ceiling, came in his blurry vision, but everything was blurred, and he couldn't properly recognize the shapes. Zuvawu. With a voice close to groaning, Jude closed and opened his eyes repeatedly. And the blurriness began to disappear. How? A few seconds, no, maybe a dozen seconds after, Jude was finally fully awake and looked around. He was in a well-decorated and luxurious bedroom. It was evident to him that this was the high-class accommodation that he had stayed in when they first came to Langesthay. Young Master, are you awake? Just then he heard Marge's voice. It was a voice close to a scream that was mixed with anxiety and joy. Marge. Young Master. In the Bayer family, Marge was often called the Ice Queen, but she often smiled in front of Jude. But now she wasn't just smiling. Maya was both crying and laughing now. Young Master. I'm okay, Marge, what about you? Did you get hurt? Marja was like a family to Jude, but outside Count Bayer, she was only an exclusive maid in the end. She was the only one who was uncomfortable when she was forced to attend the banquet, so Jude had sent her back earlier to their accommodation. Of course, this was because he had predicted the attack. "I'm all right. In the first place, I was staying in the accommodation. Rather than that, young Master R." As Marja shed tears again, Jude was feeling restless and puzzled on what to do, so he awkwardly reached out his hands and hugged her. "It's all right, I'm safe." "Young Master." After a few minutes, Marja calmed down from her crying storm, and Jude patted her back and asked, "Marja, what about Lady Cordelia?" "She's all right." Marja wiped away her tears and took a breath as she adjusted her posture, and then spoke with a light smile. "She overworked herself, so she's still lying down, but she has regained her consciousness a little earlier than young Master. The doctors said that she was just too tired and that there was no harm to her health." "Hi." Jude breathed a sigh of relief and then began stretching. He was worried about her one way or another. "Young Master, if you don't mind, would you like to go see Lady Cordelia?" As Marja smiled and said that, Jude immediately nodded. "Please." "As you wish, young Master." With Marja's help, Jude got up and left the room after roughly washing and grooming himself. Their rooms were on the same floor, so after passing the drawing room between their rooms, he was now in front of Cordelia's bedroom. "Lady Cordelia, Mr. Jude Bayer has come to visit." Count Chase's knight was guarding Cordelia's bedroom and greeted Jude with a very welcoming face. He immediately reported to Cordelia about Jude's visit. Without waiting for too long, Cordelia's bedroom door opened wide. "Mr. Jude Bayer." Dahlia, who had tear marks on her face like Marja, greeted Jude with a smile. And in the room was Cordelia, lying on a bed large enough to wrestle. "Lady Cordelia." Instead of answering Jude's call, Cordelia simply nodded once. Her condition seemed much worse than Jude's, as she had a pale white face and eyes that had no strength that it seemed like she'll fall asleep anytime soon. "Dahlia, I apologize, but may we be alone for a moment?" "Yes, Mr. Bayer, please take care of the lady." Dahlia readily accepted and left the room together with Marja after bowing to Cordelia. After a few seconds, when the door was completely closed, Cordelia spoke. "I think I'm going to die." "Yes, me too." Coming to the edge of the bed with a wobbly gait, Jude flopped on the chair where Dahlia had sat on earlier. "Is your condition not good?" "I used too much mana. My head is so heavy and I feel like it's going to break." "Oh, is it similar to a hangover?" "A hangover?" "Yes, oh, maybe it is." Cordelia awkwardly answered as she slouched her shoulders. "I feel sick, tired and about to die." "Wells, you really don't look well." She wasn't the yellow storm that would always whine and retort in front of Outboxer. "Hey, shouldn't you feel good though? You saw the title too, right? The one who made the impossible possible." A smile bloomed like a flower on Cordelia's face, who was a while ago had tears on her face and saying that she felt so tired to death. She felt really good that she began laughing, heh, like a fool. The Legend of Heroes community would completely be turned upside down. The chat window's going to be a mess. Will hero us? Maybe. It was an impossible story, but that's why it's pleasant we changed it. Cordelia took a long breath before speaking again. "Dahlia told me that Viola and Felix are safe, and so are the twin brothers. Originally, they were those who would have been killed or kidnapped in the Devil's Hands attack. But they didn't die. They weren't kidnapped and they were alive. I feel excited for no reason." The title was good, and the sense of accomplishment from twisting the main scenario as intended was also good, but Cordelia was happier that she had saved many people, including the children of the 12 families. "Oh dear Tilda, look at how nice our yellow storm is. I feel so proud of you." As Jude smiled happily and stroked Cordelia's hair, her eyes narrowed. "You will be killed by me. Why are you seeking petting me?" "This is our yellow storm." Jude replied as he smiled, feeling satisfied before leaning on the chair's back. "With this, we've passed over a hump." What should we do now? Well, we've twisted the main scenario, but we still have to follow it. In Cordelia's main scenario, she was destined to be kidnapped in the Devil's Hands attack event, no matter what she did. Wasn't her second mission to escape from her kidnapped situation? If she successfully escapes, the survival route opens, but if she fails, she becomes a sacrifice and it would be game over. The survival route was as follows. Cordelia escapes from an unknown Devil's Hands branch and wanders around a deep and dark forest to escape her pursuers and monsters. She then meets the witch's soul as if she were led by fate. Cordelia laughed when Jude recited the summary of the story in Legend of Heroes 2. Are you for real? No, are you even a human? How can a person remember all those things? She didn't care if he was a rotten water, but Jude's memory was far beyond common sense. Should I ask him? If I ask, he might answer me unexpectedly. At the time Cordelia was contemplating for a moment, Jude continued to speak whether he knew what she was thinking. Because she had not been kidnapped by the Devil's Hands, Cordelia wouldn't wander around the woods, but she has to go. You have to meet the witch's soul. The meeting with the witch's soul was not a hidden event like the Moonlight Acquisition event. It was one of the main events that was absolutely necessary to continue the game. Because I have to do a spec up. After all, Legend of Heroes 2 is a fighting game. Aside from hunting, if you steadily follow the main events, you will become stronger. The forest was probably north of Langesthay, right? Yes, so we have to go north. It wasn't just because of Cordelia. Jude's main scenario, which had not yet begun, was also concentrated in the north. Well, what should I do? Why? You see, Dahlia told me something earlier, but it's only been a day since we came to our senses. Not all the news have been spread to each family yet, but the escort knights must have decided on a policy. What kind of policy? There may be additional attacks, so it seems like everyone is gathering together later in the evening to exchange information on this incident. We'll have to wait until someone comes to pick us up, though. Given that the Devil's Hands attack was prevented, the remaining problem was our explanation on the various preparations we made and the fight that occurred yesterday. There's also the Blue Lion. We need a solution regarding the part about Count Bayer's intervention, which was the lie that Jude made to move the Blue Lion Knight commander, Sir Bayua. Now that things have grown this big, Count Bayer will definitely hear the story about the Devil's Hands attack and the Blue Lion's surprise attack on the branches. So what should we do? Wouldn't we need some excuse to go north without going home? Apart from settling the aftermath, we also need measures on how to move forward. Jude answered Cordelia's question with folded arms. First of all, I have some ideas. What is it? First, you and I have to kiss *. No, that's not what I mean. Anyway, we'll have the people around us to help out. This is a pun based on the idiom, which can mean two different things. Jude was talking about the first meaning, but realized that Cordelia could interpret it as the second meaning, so he says, that's not what I mean, afterwards. Who was around us? Of course, Luca, wait. Jude suddenly stopped talking as he frowned and tilted his head. He felt like he had completely forgotten something important. What is it? We defeated Minos. The kidnapping case ended in failure. And Jude and Cordelia are safe. Lucas is safe too. According to Cordelia, Viola, Felix and the twin brothers are also safe. Then, Jude sprang up from his seat, and at the same time, Cordelia opened her eyes wide too. It's because the two remembered the same thing and the same person at the same time. Sylvia, you are, how could you forget? Me here alone you were. In the secret room in the corner of the banquet hall, which is now the scene of the incident. Sylvia, who was trapped inside the pit for one day, burst into a sad cry in Cordelia's arms. A night, I'm sorry, I'm really, really sorry. Although Cordelia's face still had a sickly appearance, she repeatedly apologized after facing Sylvia. I was scared, it was dark, there was no sound * sniff. Sylvia blew her nose with a handkerchief that Jude gave at the right time, as she kept sniffling. Seeing the confident, pretty, and incomparably beautiful woman, crying out sadly like a child and revealing her inner thoughts. She really must have been scared over the past day. The pit did a great job. We had worked hard to turn the pit in the secret room into a panic room, just in case. I even drew a silence magic circle inside the pit, in the fear of being caught because of the sound. Because of that, Sylvia, who was forcibly dropped into the pit, didn't know what was happening outside because everything was in perfect silence and there was no light. Unai, I'm sorry. She was Cordelia now before she was Yellow Storm. She was sincerely sorry because she was now Cordelia, who had always admired the beautiful and elegant Sylvia. Lucas, what the hell did you do? Cordelia herself and Jude had fainted at that time. It was the very reason that Cordelia had asked him to settle the aftermath after they fainted. I'll kill you later. At the time when Cordelia made a firm resolve, Jude slightly pulled Cordelia's skirt to tell her to distance herself from Sylvia. Sylvia had to be entrusted to the Knights of Count Crossbell. Miss, let's go. Ugh, okay. Sylvia, who had become very obedient, left the room with the knights, and Dahlia said cautiously as Jude and Cordelia sighed. I'm sorry, both of you didn't seem to be stable yet, so we couldn't tell you the news of Lady Sylvia's disappearance. No, it's all right, it's not Dahlia's fault, it's all Lucas' fault. Cordelia clenched her fists in rage, as her fighting spirit was inflamed. However, Jude couldn't join Cordelia. I have to stop her to avoid causing a problem later on. We needed Lucas' help to get to the north. Jude's plan was as follows. Lucas' home was located in the northernmost front where Count Bayer stayed in the past, and where the current Margrave, Count H.R. Svelga, now lives in. It was located near the fortress of Thunderdoom, which borders the barbaric land. A sunflower that possesses yang energy can be found there. It was one of the several means to heal Gyumjulmeek. Jude had already obtained the sun's necklace to treat Gyumjulmeek, but it was still not cured. We head to the north on the pretext of getting the sunflower and speeding up the treatment of Gyumjulmeek. And in order to do so, we had to naturally bring out the story of the sunflower to Lucas, and at the same time, lead the story of inviting us to the north. Wait. When we had returned to our accommodation, Cordelia frowned after listening to Jude's explanation. Aside from the mission to draw out the story you want from Lucas, and the Gyumjulmeek that is evolving day by day into some all-around excuse, there was one more important part that was missing from Jude's story. What about me then? Jude will go to the north to cure his disease, but what excuse can Cordelia give to go there too? At Cordelia's question, Jude cleared his throat once and said while turning his head as if to avoid looking at her. That what? Come on, you should already know. How Cordelia will follow Jude. In an instant, Cordelia had a tearful face. Afterwards, she lets out a long sigh before raising her middle finger to Jude. I want to go with my beloved Jude Bayer, we were inseparable. Chapter 26, Episode 26, Devil's Hand, 7. I want to go with my beloved Jude Bayer, we were inseparable. Yes, that's perfect, that's all you have to do. Jude clapped his hands, and Cordelia closed her eyes tightly with a red face and threw up a curse. Oh, really? Yes, I understand. Cordelia's face flushed even more when Jude sympathized with her. It was not from shame, but because of anger. Hey. Yes. Why? Why is it me again? You can do it, that's right. It doesn't necessarily have to be me. Cordelia's argument was that Jude and Cordelia love each other, and not that Cordelia loves Jude one-sidedly. As if she came to a great realization, Cordelia's eyes sparkled in excitement, but Jude shook his head. Hey, that's not it. Why is it not you? Is this because of Gyumjulmeek again? No, it's not because of Gyumjulmeek, just think it through with common sense. Jude made some big gestures with his two hands to calm her down, and then stood up and continued to speak. Who of us has business in the north, you or me? It's you. That's right, it's me, so it's a situation where Cordelia wants to follow me, right? And if I say that I don't want to be separated from Cordelia here, and that I want to take Cordelia with me because we're in love, it sounds different, right? Jude had an awkward and bitter smile, and Cordelia was in tears again. It was as Jude said. There was a huge difference between Jude taking Cordelia and Cordelia following Jude. So if you think about it rationally, it's a situation where Cordelia has to appeal to follow Jude. I would have done it had I been in the opposite situation. Really, cross my heart. Cordelia frowned when Jude put his hand on his chest, as if he really swore. I hate you. I'm sorry, I love you. What is this crazy bastard saying? I just told you, okay? Jude slyly smiled as he sat back down, and the pouting Cordelia sat down too. Okay, let's say that we'll solve that problem with that. However, we still need to coordinate our stories for the information exchange, and so on. That will happen later tonight. Is it because we defeated Minos? Yes, Lucas helped us, but no matter how you think of it, it was still too much for the three of us to defeat Minos. If Minos had only fought with Jude's party, he could have said, Minos was just weak. The problem was the fact that Minos defeated none other than the flame wizard Ronin in front of everyone. Everyone would have thought it was strange if Jude and Cordelia had defeated such a strong man. How about we say that he was tired and weak because he fought with Ronin? That will work, but I even sold my father's name so to draw a big picture. We need to play another card. Another card? Come closer for a second. Jude suddenly looked around as he spoke in a small voice, and Cordelia blinked her eyes and sat closer to Jude. So, as Jude explained in a small whisper, Cordelia quietly listened and at some point nodded. It's because she thought that it was a plausible story. Hey, by the way. What? Do we really have to talk in whispers? There was only the two of us in the room in the first place. No, I did it unconsciously. I just went along with the ambience. Cordelia's eyes narrowed in anger, while Jude made an awkward laugh. Sometimes I don't know if he's stupid or smart. I'm sure he's crazily smart, but he has a clumsy side to him too. Indeed, Outboxer is a human too. Cordelia convinced herself as she nodded and quietly smiled, while Jude continued his words as if to change the topic. Do you somehow understand it? I'll go ahead with the whole story so you can match with my rhythm later. Okay. They have to pull off their plan this evening. Jude and Cordelia looked at each other and nodded. Trajan, one of Langestha's leading luxury lodgings, was much more crowded than usual. This is because all the children from the 12 northern families who were staying in Langestha moved to Trajan, and at night, guests from various places gathered there too, including the knights. While the Order of the Blue Lion and the Langestha Guard fiercely guarded Trajan, the Blue Lion's Knight Commander, Sir Bayua, and the Langestha Guard's captain were inside. Langestha's mayor and the wizards of the Red Dawn Tower, led by Flame Wizard Ronin, also visited Trajan. And at 8 p.m. in the conference room located in Trajan's first floor, Jude stood and started talking to everyone. We met the Fairy Queen. What? Fairy Queen, the Queen of the Fairies. Oh, of course, the fairies have many queens just like humans, it's not just one. Everyone in the conference room looked around at each other in confusion to Jude's explanation. Wasn't he going to talk about how he defeated the demonic human? Why did he talk about the Fairy Queen all of a sudden? Moreover, he met the Fairy Queen. Are you confused? I understand, but it's true. Me and Lady Cordelia met the Fairy Queen a few days before arriving at Langestha. The atmosphere in the conference room shifted to, let's hear it for now, as Jude calmly spoke. A satisfied Jude continued to speak. It was a fantastic night with a very beautiful moon. The fairies fell in love with Lady Cordelia's dazzling appearance and asked her if she wanted to participate in the Fairy Queen's night banquet. Jude pointed to Cordelia as he spoke, and everyone's eyes turned to her. Cordelia's face instantly blushed red, and she lowered her head. What's the crazy bastard saying? It was true, but it was still embarrassing. However, Jude asked Cordelia indifferently. Isn't it true, Lady Cordelia? The fairies approached and said that Lady Cordelia was so beautiful and that you were invited to the Fairy Queen's night banquet, right? Yes. Cordelia responded with a despondent voice, but everyone in the room did not doubt her sincerity. It was indeed true that Cordelia was a very beautiful girl. Furthermore, it was cute to see her blushing in embarrassment. In the meantime, a bicorn suddenly appeared and attacked us. The fairies said that the bicorn always bothered them. The word bicorn lit up the eyes of the wizards, including Ronan. The bicorn was a monster that was hard to see like the unicorn. This is the horn of the bicorn we defeated at that time. Me and Lady Cordelia fought together to bring it down, and we took one horn each. Wonder and amazement spread among the wizards as Jude gently shook the bicorn's horn he held in his hand. Wait, can you show me that for a moment? Of course. In response to the wizard's request, Jude handed over the bicorn's horn through Jun, who was next to him. Oh, it's real. It's real, it's clearly the bicorn's horn. It's filled with chaotic energy. The atmosphere in the conference room changed a little when the wizards admired the horn. It slowly became an atmosphere of complete trust in Jude's words. When the bicorn was defeated, the fairies wanted to invite us more to the fairies' banquet hall, so they guided me and Lady Cordelia there, and we met the fairy queen. Wow! Sylvia let out a word of admiration. She may be an incomparably beautiful woman, but she was also a young maiden of 18 years and still a girl at heart. If this was a private meeting, she would have approached us right away and asked questions about the fairy queen. Jude described the fairy queen's appearance in quite detail for such Sylvia, and then looked back at Cordelia again. The fairy queen gave us one gift for defeating the bicorn. It's the moonlight. It was now Cordelia's turn. Cordelia gulped before she got up from her seat while holding moonlight, and then stood next to Jude. This is the sacred rod moonlight. It possesses a powerful amount of the moon's mana. When Cordelia raised the moonlight forward, not only the wizards but also the knights showed their interest. Jude was satisfied with everyone's reactions. He had succeeded in creating the atmosphere. From now on, whatever he said would sound quite credible as long as he did not make excessive claims. Moonlight has accumulated the moon's mana for the past 100 years. In the fight against the demonic human, Lady Cordelia released its power all at once. As a result, we were able to defeat the enemy, who had been greatly exhausted from his battle with Ronan. There was no need to mention the sun's necklace or Belastin's magic circle. Lucas doesn't know much about Belastin's magic circle anyway. Like a swordsman, he'd only think I use some magic and not think about it too much. I see, so that was what happened. So Bayua, the Blue Lion's commander, gave Jude the answer he wanted the most, and everyone in the room began to look convinced, as if a line of dominoes collapsed. Okay, it worked. The majority were also convinced when Lucas, who actually participated in the fight, had also nodded to their story. Now, no one will raise an objection to this matter. It would be nice if my explanation for my father's involvement works well too. It was the reason why Jude chose to use the Fairy Queen's name. The Fairy Queen told me. Something big is going to happen in Langesthay. She said it was a place where an ominous force was gathered, and she also taught me the place. I had no choice but to use my father's name because I thought you wouldn't believe what the Fairy Queen said. I'm really sorry. I will accept any deserving punishment. So Bayeux had said the source of their information was Count Bayer, so it was clear that Count Bayer would question Jude on where he got such information. That's why I used the Fairy Queen as the source, as she is someone who cannot easily be found if you want to verify the information. It's also important that we managed to stop it. Thanks to Jude's information, they were able to capture close to 70 demon followers, and as a result, we were able to minimize the damages from the attack as well. Count Bayer judges a person's merits and demerits fairly, so the contributions that I made will be enough to cover the fact that I sold his name. Perfect. As Jude smiled with satisfaction, Cordelia was staring from the side with eyes full of suspicion. His ability to create a story by mixing truth and falsehood, and his acting ability to lie without faltering in front of so many people made her suspicious. Was it really possible that Outboxer 009's job was a scammer? There is a possibility. It was when Cordelia snorted and was getting excited. Hey, I can see what you're thinking. Anyway, let's get back to our seats. Jude slightly nudged the stiff Cordelia, who squealed from his nudging. The two then descended from the platform and returned to their seats. After that, the story went on as Jude had thought. Since the purpose of the attack is still unclear, I would like the children of the 12 northern families to stay only at their lodgings, even if it's a little uncomfortable, until reinforcements from the families arrive. The enemy's purpose was unclear. Only Jude and Cordelia knew that the Devil's Hand was aiming at Lucas and Cordelia. They wouldn't know because the Devil's Hand's combatants were not informed of the attack's purpose in the first place, and Minos, who knew their purpose, unexpectedly died. No matter how many times they tortured and threatened the Devil's Hand's combatants that they had captured, nothing would come out. It's better that their true purpose is hidden after all. If it becomes known, it will be more difficult to move with Cordelia. It was decided in the meeting that they should prepare for any future attacks of the Devil's Hand, but frankly, it would be difficult for the demon followers to execute a large-scale operation again when they've failed once already. That is all. The Order of the Blue Lion will be stationed on the first floor, so please feel free to contact us if you need help or have any questions. After Sir Bayu's words, the meeting was virtually over. However, only Sir Bayu's party left the conference room. Most of them wanted to talk with each other, and some wanted to talk to Jude and Cordelia. Thank you so much, I lived thanks to the two of you. The first person that came to Jude and Cordelia was Sylvia. When she, an absolutely beautiful woman, thanked them with tears in her eyes, even Jude's face was bound to turn red from the sight. Cordelia made a HMPH sound at seeing Jude blushing, before she held Sylvia's hands and said, "No, Unnai, you were very scared, right?" "Yeah, but even Cordelia herself thought it was really great, and..." As Sylvia slightly slurred at the end of her sentence, Cordelia tilted her head and waited for her next words. She was Cordelia, who only showed her yellow storm side when she was with Jude, but in front of others, her Cordelia Chase self was more active. "Can we talk a little more? The story of the fight with the demonic human is scary, but I'd like to hear more about the fairies." "Of course, Unnai, I'll tell you everything." This time, Sylvia slightly blushed when Cordelia smiled brightly. It was because Cordelia's beautiful smile was like that of a blooming flower. "Viola, come here too, let's talk together." "Yes, Unnai." Whilst in the corner, Viola trembled at Cordelia's beckoning. However, when she saw Cordelia's slightly excited voice and eyes, she was very happy that Cordelia called her. So, it was a very beautiful night with the moon. As Cordelia began to talk, the twins and Felix slipped in. And the wizards and knight who were interested in the fairy queen also gathered. "Okay, let's leave that side to Cordelia." Instead of going to Cordelia, Jude turned to Lucas, who was still present in the room. Their eyes met with each other, whether by coincidence or that Lucas was already looking this way in the first place. "Mr. Jude Bayer, can I talk to you?" Lucas got up from his seat and asked Jude after approaching. It was a welcome situation for Jude, who also had something to say to Lucas. "Of course, Lord Lucas, I want to talk about the fight that day. I've managed to live because of Lord Lucas' help." Lucas had a bitter smile as Jude spoke smoothly. Lucas had eyes that could make an accurate evaluation of people and things. So he knew that it was Jude and Cordelia who led the fight that day, not Lucas himself. "Now, how do I do this?" Jude pondered as he sat down with Lucas. As he had told Cordelia, he had to inform Lucas about the sunflower and at the same time, draw out a story that I wanted to invite him to the north. "Let's start talking about the fight." Starting with the fight against Minos, he spills the story of his Gumjulmeek and tells the story of an implicit cure. It was the moment when Jude had roughly finished planning in his head and was about to open his mouth. "Mr. Jude Bayer." "Yes, Lord Lucas." When Jude responded smoothly, Lucas thought Jude was picking his breath and said in a slightly lowered voice, "By any chance, have you ever heard of the sunflower?" "Sunflower?" A gentle smile was formed on Jude's face. Chapter 27, Episode 27, Devil's Hand 8. Sunflower. Beyond the northernmost border of the Len Kingdom, at the entrance to the land of barbarians, lies a historic site called Frost Anvil. The most prevalent theory is that it is the ruins of an old kingdom built by the Frost Dwarves. However, the important thing about the Frost Anvil area is that it was an extreme land with the harshest temperatures. What's the coldest place on the continent? It's Frost Anvil, of course. In fact, it wasn't just a cold place. It was a place where if you sprayed water in the air, it would become icicles. Opinions were divided on why this extreme zone was created, with some saying that the Frost Dwarves device was still in operation, and the theological view that it was created because of a god's curse. There is one legend in Frost Anvil. Once every 20 years, somewhere in Frost Anvil, a sunflower blooms with yang energy. A flower rich in yang that blooms in an extreme land. And this story was a fact, not a legend. In a way, it's more useful than the sunfire carp. Among the items with yang energy that appeared in Legend of Heroes 2, the king of items was obviously the sunfire carp, but in fact, the sunfire carp was an item that didn't have any other uses except for its yang energy. On the other hand, the sunflower may have less yang energy than the sunfire carp, but it had a function that increased the overall abilities of the body, and also transformed the body of the person absorbing it into having a special physical constitution. Lucas had said it first. In the original story, the sunflower event didn't happen until the main event. It was close to a hidden event like Cordelia and the Fairies' Banquet, and it could be said to be an event prepared for Lucas, although any character in the North, including Jude and Lucas, could trigger it. Well, Lucas only knows that the sunflower is a flower with yang energy. There is a saying that those with too much yin or yang energy can be rather harmful to the body because the energy is biased towards one side. An example is Meek. I have heard of it, it's a flower with yang energy, right? Yes, it's a flower that is passed down like a legend in the North, but... Lucas suddenly lowered his voice and approached Jude a little closer before speaking in a low voice. It's a fact, not a legend. Count H.R. Svelga's records show the story of a man who discovered the sunflower 20 years ago. Zoo. Although Jude had already known it, he acted like he didn't know. The listener's interest was the best way to open up a story. This is now the 20th year. Winter is coming soon and the North it is timely too. At this point, it was obvious what Lucas intended to say about the sunflower. It was a situation in which he was recommending the sunflower to Jude. The question is, why is he doing this? No, he already has an idea why. Jude already knew what kind of person Lucas H.R. Svelga was. That's an interesting story, Jude said, gulping down his saliva. Pretending to be uninterested, but making it look like he is actually interested. It was the kind of acting that Cordelia couldn't do, but Jude could. Lucas' dark blue eyes glistened in excitement. Mr. Jude Bayer, would you like to go to the North with me? Bingo! Jude, who was cheering inside, did not hide his feelings. He played the role of a young master who was still immature by expressing joy all over his face, and then hurriedly calming himself down. You means to the North? Yes, if you are fine with it, Mr. Bayer, I would like to invite you to Count H.R. Svelga. If you want, you can even take Lady Cordelia with you. Oh, Lucas, oh, Lucas. He was very useful in the fight against Minos. Jude tried to suppress his desire to kiss Lucas' forehead, and continued his acting by speaking with quivering lips. Really, I'm very grateful for the offer, but why though? The relationship between Count Bayer and Count H.R. Svelga was neither good nor bad. At first glance, it would seem that there was a bad relationship between the two because Count H.R. Svelga took over the Margrave position, which was previously monopolized by Count Bayer, but in fact, there was one more family between the two. From Count Bayer to Count Pale before to Count H.R. Svelga. It was nearly 50 years ago that the Count of Bayer held the Margrave position. Due to the death of that time's Count Bayer from a large-scale battle with the northern barbarians, the position of Margrave was transferred to Count Pale. However, it wasn't long before another tragedy happened, and the newly appointed Margrave, Count Pale, unexpectedly died. Therefore, the centre dispatched Count H.R. Svelga, who was a talented man and at the forefront of the 10 swordmasters at that time, and from then on, Count H.R. Svelga maintained his position as the head of the 12 northern families. We are not enemies, but that doesn't mean we're on good terms. Should I say we're just friends? At Jude's question, Lucas' face slightly turned red as he looked away and said, Because I thought I met a good rival. As I expected. Jude felt like his laughter would leak out at the expected answer, but he kept a serious expression. Do you mean your rival? Yes, I'm a little embarrassed, but up until this day, I've never met someone my age who was a good match against me. Lucas was a sword genius. He wasn't born with Gumjalmeek like Jude, so he grew up demonstrating his brilliant talent from childhood. I have no peers I can compare with. That may sound good, but in fact, I've always felt lonely. An existence that can stand on equal footing with me and move forward with me. I've always longed for such a rival. Lucas' face and voice was full of sincerity. He looked like a handsome and attractive-looking man out of a painting, so the listening Jude had to use his all to maintain a serious face. Ah, really, it's so cheesy. I already knew it from Lucas' character settings, but listening to it in person felt new in many ways. Mr. Jude Bayer. Yes, Lord Lucas. When Jude barely answered in time, Lucas stared at Jude with a serious face and abruptly grabbed Jude's hand. I was convinced when I saw Mr. Bayer fighting. It became clear to me that Mr. Bayer was my long-aspired rival. Well, Maximilian was originally his rival, but Jude has Chunmujic, so I'm worthy of being his rival. But why is he holding my hand? Jude barely suppressed his inner thoughts as he faced Lucas' strong gaze head-on. So I thought, let's heal Mr. Bayer's disease as soon as possible. If that happens, Jude can use his talents properly. In fact, after we defeated Minos, Lucas' mind was filled with thoughts of Cordelia. It was not because he fell in love with Cordelia, but because her true colors were so shocking. But as time went by, Jude's fight kept coming to his mind. The movement shown by Jude. His unmatched fighting method. A talented genius that can be recognized by a fellow talented genius. Mr. Bayer, let's go to the north together. I will help you find the sunflower. It was an unexpected proposal. But this time again, instead of answering right away, Jude paused and took his time. It was to keep Lucas in suspense. This should be okay. Was it roughly 20 seconds already? During that time, Lucas' eyes shook. Before Jude finally responded, in a heavy yet serious tone, as if he was opening his mouth after careful consideration. Thank you very much. However, rather than asking to find the sunflower together, I am more touched that Lord Lucas, who is called the Jiren of HR, Svelga, regards me as a good rival. I have just begun walking the path of martial arts, but I want to live up to Lord Lucas' expectations. Mr. Bayer, your words are. Yes, I will go with Lord Lucas. When Jude spoke with a big smile, Lucas breathed out in relief and brightly smiled too. I look forward to going north with Mr. Bayer. Yes, I look forward to it too. Once the story came to an end, Lucas rose from his seat with a happy face and returned to the Knights of Count H.R. Svelga. Seeing that Lucas' lingering excitement could be seen in his steps, Jude thought he was still a young boy of 16 years. He's a heroic novel enthusiast. The current situation itself was almost the same as the beginning of Between the Hero, one of Lucas' favorite hero novels. The words that Jude said in the end, about being happier that he became Lucas' rival more than the sunflower, was almost the same words that Catilan, the rival of the main character Between, said. Lucas must have felt like he was Between during our conversation. So does that solve one thing? Jude's shoulders lightly drooped as he turned to Cordelia. Cordelia was even using body movements in telling Sylvia and Viola, who were so absorbed in the story, about the fairies' banquet. After all, her Cordelia self becomes stronger, except when she's with me. Jude and Cordelia have awakened their memories of their previous lives. And as a result, many things have changed. With the sudden addition of 20 or so years of memories to a life that has only lived for more than a decade, his Outboxer 009 self was a little more prominent than his Jude self. And it got even worse as he faced Cordelia, who equally had memories of her previous life as Yellow Storm. Although Jude and Cordelia were engaged, they were originally in an indifferent relationship. But it was not for Outboxer 009 and Yellow Storm. It's been 5 years since I've known her, and nearly 3 years since we've been arguing with each other in the chat rooms every day, so when we're together, our identities as Outboxer and Yellow Storm were more prominent than our Jude and Cordelia selves. The proof was that we still call each other by our past lives' nicknames rather than our present lives' names. The affection for our previous lives that only the two of us share, maybe it's something like an obsession. Of course, as time goes by, it would change little by little. Right now, the memories of Jude and Outboxer mixed with each other, so his personality has changed as well. The current Jude was close to a new person, who was a little different from the existing Jude and the previous life's Outboxer Kang Jin-ho. The way we address each other will also change someday. Since the first meeting, the frequency of calling each other's nicknames has gradually decreased. The day may come that we'll call each other with new nicknames that have special meanings. Someday. Jude stood up and walked to Cordelia, who was still excitedly talking. Time has passed, and it's been 2 days since the Devil's Hands attack. The first to arrive was Count Dahut, who was the closest in geographical location. The Golden Deer Knights, the pride of Count Dahut, quickly left Langersthey with the twin brothers. The next to arrive were Count Crossbell and Viscount Lang's knights. Cordelia, this social gathering was scary, but it was really nice to meet you. I look forward to next year's social gathering. Mimi too, Cordelia and I. They were two people who sincerely regretted breaking up with Cordelia because they had become close in the last few days. I look forward to it too. I'll miss the two of you so much. Cordelia hugged Sylvia and Viola in turn, and the hug of an incomparably beautiful girl made the absolutely beautiful woman and cute girl blush their cheeks. 3 days from the Devil's Hands attack, Sylvia, Viola and Felix have left. Now only 3 people were left in Trajan: Jude, Cordelia and Lucas. My family's knights will be joining halfway through our journey. Lucas, who had been in touch with his family for the last few days, smiled as he said that. The Thunderdoom Fortress, where Count H.R. Svelger is located, was too far from Langersthey. It meant that if Jude and Cordelia were together, then Count Bayer and Count Chase's escort would be together too, so there would be no problem in terms of escorts. It would be all right for Count H.R. Svelger's knights to join in the middle. Are we the ones left? They from Count Bayer and Count Chase. And in the next morning, the group from the 2 counts finally arrived in Langersthey. HMPH, you're still weak and frail. Father. Surprisingly, it was Count Chase himself, not anyone else, who came from the Count Chase side. Ha Jude, I heard the story. You've become incredibly strong in just a few days. It was Gar El Bayer, the next Count of Bayer, who came from the Count Bayer side. Count Chase himself went, so shouldn't our side match their assortment? Gar El whispered to Jude with a smile. Since it was Count Chase himself who went, Count Bayer's heir would at least be approximate to match Count Chase's group assortment. Count Chase looked at Jude with a stern face as usual, as he said with a snort. You fought against a demonic human. Yes, thanks to Lady Cordelia and the wizards of the Red Dawn Tower, we were able to take it down. HMPH, you're still weak if you can't take it down alone. Count Chase's harsh criticism embarrassed those around him, but not for Jude. He had a happy smile when he saw Count Chase, who was now searching for something in his inner pocket. You're too weak that my mind can't be at ease. This isn't something big, so take it. I love you, father. Jude took the pitch-black bracelet from Count Chase without hesitation and smiled again. It was because the C-rank dark bracelet had a blessing to increase one's magic defense. Tusk, you still look dried up as before. This is something I bought by chance on the way here. Take it. Jude looked back and saw Count Chase's knight with an awkward smile, who lifted up a paper bag he was holding in his arms. It was clear that the contents were healthy food that was good for the body. I didn't really prepare it for you, so don't be mistaken. Of course, father. It was at that time when Jude's eyes were sparkling. Cordelia stealthily peeked at Jude's side. Why do you want us to properly divide this again? This crazy bastard, it's not that, you know that one. Ah, that one. After communicating with their eyes only, Jude and Cordelia looked back at Count Chase together, and Jude cleared his throat and adjusted his breath before opening his mouth. Father and brother, I have something to tell you. He then told the story of the sunflower and of Luca's invitation. He also added about Cordelia joining him. I want to go with my beloved Mr. Jude Bayer. I don't want to be separated from him. Cordelia held Jude's arm tightly as she said that with a flushed and tearful face. She was embarrassed by her act, but in the eyes of others, she seemed like a girl who was strongly in love with him, that she even had tears in her eyes because she wanted to be with her fiancé. My brother will say okay for sure. Gar-El was staring at Cordelia with a fully satisfied smile. Jude turned to Count Chase with his arm held by the clinging Cordelia as he gulped unconsciously. Count Chase's gaze was too scary. But it was only for a moment. Count Chase snorted as he searched around in his inner pocket again and said, I wonder if this weak guy can protect Cordelia. The way he spoke was aggressive, but there was a new item in his hand already. These are trivial items, but still take it. What Count Chase offered was a pair of rings. It looked like he casually bought and prepared it for Jude and Cordelia, but it seemed to be items that he had carried for a long time, as one could feel the energy of powerful mana emanating from the rings. It was at that moment. Please take care of Cordelia. Jude heard those words in his mind from message, magic. As Jude raised his head, Count Chase turned around with a cold expression. Now that I've finished my business, I'm going home. I'll tell that old man, Count Bayer, well, so make sure to get back safely from the north. Thank you, Father. Father, I'll be back. Count Chase replied by raising his hand at the greetings of Jude and Cordelia as he settled down in the drawing room because he had other business before leaving Trajan. His business with Jude and Cordelia was over. But there were still other things to do, such as meeting with Ronin and the other wizards of the Red Dawn Tower. HMPH, do your work. When the slightly red-eared Count Chase turned his head and waved his hands, the Count's knights went to Sir Zebek, who was in charge of the journey, and began to coordinate this and that. Because we were going on a long trip again, there were a lot of things to discuss, which included the composition of escorts. Father won't say much either, so don't worry and leave. Gar-El spoke without hesitation, as he personally arranged the escort group who'd follow Jude. As for the remaining two, Cordelia was fiddling with the ring Count Chase gave her, as she slightly pouted her lips and looked at Jude. Well, what the hell just happened? Jude was invited by Lucas, and I got permission from my father. There's even a couple ring. No, we got a magic item. It's a great success. Jude smiled in satisfaction as he held out his fist to her. Cordelia laughed and snorted as she bumped her fists with him. The next morning, the three groups of Count Bayer, Count Chase and Count H.R. Svelga set off for Thunder Doom Fortress, in the northernmost part of their Len kingdom.